Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my December 2022 reading wrap-up. If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but today we're just talking about the books. This is probably the hardest time of year for me just because I am so physically drained from the fact that it is now finally winter and I don't see a lot of sun and I'm just tired and I want to go on vacation, and I'm actually doing that this weekend. So even though there's some end of the year content that I would like to make, it's gonna have to wait till next week probably because I need a vacation first. I am so tired. I'm going to start with the nerdy hardcore stats and charts and then get into what I read. Also, I put chapter markers in all of my videos, so if there's anything you need to skip or go back to, all of that is down below for you, as well as a ton of other different links that you can utilize to support me in whichever way makes sense for you. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please do that and ring the notification bell so you actually get notified when I upload. In December, I read 18 books for a total of 5,503 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so 2,227 of those pages were actually about 66 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 12 adult books, 5 YA books, and 1 middle grade book. I read 16 novels and 2 novellas. This month I read 4 contemporaries, 3 mystery thrillers, 3 non-fiction, 3 fantasies, 2 horrors, 2 historical fictions, and 1 smut book. If you adjust by page count, you can tell the smut was a novella. Many of these were from the library, but I also read some from book boxes, NetGalley, publishers, and book retailers. I read 6 audiobooks, 6 ebooks, 4 paperbacks, and 2 hardcovers. The biggest chunk of my books were in the 300 to 399 page range, and most of these books were published in the last 3 years. Half of these books were by female authors, with 5 being written by non-binary authors and 4 by men, and I had a very nice variety of protagonist genders. In terms of setting, the US continues to dominate this graph, followed by other worlds, the UK, Australia, and Canada. In terms of diversity of subject matter, about a third were intersectional, another third were queer, some had to do with race, 1 had a queer author who wrote on another subject, and some had no discernible diversity. In terms of star ratings this month, I had 4 3-star reads, 2 3.5-star reads, 3 4-star reads, 2 4.5-star reads, and 7 5-star reads. Let's start with our lowest rated read and work our way up to the highest, shall we? Kathy from editing here. I was just going through and making sure that all of my cuts were fine, and I was about to export, and then I realized I only talked about 17 out of 18 books and had to go through and be like, which one did I miss? And it was the least favorite one. That's probably why I missed it. I've already blocked it out of my brain. This one was called The Third Rainbow Girl. It is a true crime book, so I've wanted to really like it, but it's just written in a style that I don't really enjoy, and that's the style of they are talking about a true crime case, but the author is also really talking about themselves, and it feels more like this should be 2 different books. One is a memoir and one is about this case, and it's really compiled both of those things about equally, and I just don't like that style. I just really don't enjoy it at all. I like having some context as to why the author wanted to write about this story, but I don't like it when it's about 50-50 and it feels super weird to me. So that's why I didn't really enjoy it, and that's why it was my least favorite read, and that's why I've immediately forgotten about it, and why I have to add this clip right now. My lowest 3-star read this month was Young Bloomsbury. This is a nonfiction that had a really long title to it, but it's basically talking about bisexuality and queer found family in Bloomsbury in London in the 1920s. As I stated when I talked about this in my weekly wrap-up, this is a really good book for people who already know who all of these people are, because there are so many people detailed in this book that there's a dramatis personae at the beginning, which I don't think I've ever seen with a nonfiction book before. There's like 30 different people, some of them famous, some I had heard of before, like Virginia Woolf, but I don't even know that much about her specifically. I definitely didn't know that much about all of the other people, and this is one of those books where it's great if you already have some understanding of the subject matter. It was also great to find out about found family and these people coming together and having queer community in the 1920s in London, which I didn't know existed before, but because I was not very familiar with these people and I didn't really care about them, just the way it was written, this just didn't really work for me. My next 3-star read, and I'm really hoping that nobody's going to flame me in the comments for not liking your particular fave, was Jade City. This is a book I've actually taken out of the library 3 or 4 times as an audiobook, and I was actually listening to it with Chad on our road trip up to the Northwest Territories. So it took us a while to get through it because he has to listen to things at 1x speed, especially when you're driving. I also have to drop it down when I'm driving, to be honest. And then obviously we had to wait until we were both together and we had the book and it wasn't loaned to somebody else. So this actually took us from about October to sometime in December to finish. What you may or may not know about Chad is he goes back and forth between sci-fi and fantasy, using one as a palate cleanser for the other. He does read a couple of other things, but in order to find a book from the library that he would also be interested in listening to, it had to be fantasy or it had to be sci-fi. This one happened to be fantasy, and it was also on my 12 challenge, so I thought it was perfect to actually listen to this together. And it was fine. The world seemed kind of interesting. However, both of us are not really the type of people that care about political structures, especially when you have these two very intricate families that are basically warring against each other, and I have all of these different people that work under them in these very specific structures, and a lot of this book was that, and we didn't really care about that. We cared about the other plot things that are probably going to be more prominent in the other books, but that doesn't really matter to us because we're not going to read them. My other 3-star read was The 30 Names of Night. This was another book I read for the 12 challenge. Also, if you want to know how I did with the 12 challenge, I'll link my reading vlog down below for that. This book definitely got bonus points for being queer, and some of the writing was beautiful, but some of it seems so overwritten that I sometimes didn't know what was going on, and that's really a problem for me personally, because when something is overwritten and overflowery like that, it makes me feel like I'm not going to understand what's happening. I have the same problem with poetry, and because this was very poetic, I had that problem with it, and that's a personal taste thing. Something you might have even noticed about how I rate books is it's very, very rare that I give out a 1 or a 2-star, and that's because mostly I want to read books that I'm going to at least somewhat enjoy and have some merit, and I save 1 or 2-star ratings for things that are like actively bad, and I will tell you the reasons why. This one was not actively bad, it just wasn't up to my tastes. This one was a dual timeline. Our main character is a trans man, except for he hasn't come out yet, so his family doesn't know about that, so they're still using his dead name because he hasn't told them his actual name yet. He's still grieving the loss of his mother, who died about 5 years previously, and she really liked this one artist, and he actually ends up finding that artist's journals, and then we have this second perspective through these journals. This had a lot to do with art and birds for various different reasons throughout the plot, so I enjoyed how interconnected that was, but altogether this just wasn't my favorite, and that's perfectly okay. On to my 3.5-star reads. One of the novellas that I read specifically for the Queer Lit Readathon, which is how I managed to read 18 books this month, is I read 10 of them in 1 week. Anyway, that novella was called Rough Paradise by Alec Butler. This is a book about an Indigenous intersex character and living with that reality, and having so many people shit on him for just who he is, and then actually meeting like the love of his life and them trying to be together, and these certain complications that came with that. This one is very dark. It also leaves off in a place that could be hopeful, but I found very dark, but it is also very important representation. My other 3.5-star read was also the smut that I read, and that is Exodus 23. I keep saying 2030 every time I talk about this, and I never mean to. I know what the numbers are, but my mouth doesn't understand what my brain is doing. It's actually interesting that both of my novellas ended up being 3.5-star reads. I didn't notice that until just now. In this book, our protagonist is also a trans man, and he is going to work for this other person kind of in the middle of nowhere, rebuilding a church, and a sexual relationship occurs, but it is so much more than that, because the person that he's working for is not what he seems on the surface, and that's all I can really leave it at. I am not an overly religious person, so all of the religious themes that ran through this were lost on me because I didn't really pick up on them like somebody who grew up really religious would, but I picked up enough to know that these themes were very strong and would be very interesting to somebody who actually cares about religion. On to my 4-star reads, the first one being White Horse. This was the first book I ever got from the Book of the Month Club, which is finally in Canada, and if you would like to join, just like every other booktuber, I have a link down below. I think it's my referral link. Every time I've gone to try to find my referral link on the app, I've never found it again, so I have no idea if they're actually even letting people refer from Canada anymore. I have no idea, but I was very excited this finally came to Canada because I've always felt left out. This book is about an Indigenous main character who always thought that her mother just ran away from her when she was a couple of days old, and she comes into contact with with this family heirloom, and upon coming into contact with that, she starts seeing ghosts. This was horror, this was intriguing. I ended up really enjoying how this character went through this journey of not wanting anything to do with this and then trying to figure out what actually happened to her mother. Next, another book I read for the Queer Lit Readathon is The Year Shakespeare Ruined My Life. This is about a high school senior who is basically conned into becoming the producer slash stage manager of the school show, which ends up being A Midsummer Night's Dream. She doesn't really care about ye old Shakespeare, she just really wants this to look good so she can become valedictorian, and somebody else who is up for that role is actually in the cast, so she's having a hard time with that because all he really does is make boob jokes, but apparently he actually passes with such great grades that he is up against her as competition for valedictorian. I don't know how it works where you live, but I thought it was just based on your grade point average. At least that's what I think it was based on when I went to high school. So I'm wondering if it's just different where other people are from. That's fine. Anyway, she ends up doing this, but so many things keep going wrong to the detriment of her own life, to the fact that she wants to date this certain person and whether or not that's going to happen, and somebody else being interested in her, and it's a messy circumstance, but I love books that include things to do with theater. I love theater. I was a theater kid, so it was just so much fun to revisit that part of my youth in this book. Finally, for my 4-star reads, we have Infested. This is another horror book, and I actually got this one from BookBox Canada. It was their first ever horror box, and they do quarterly boxes. I am also a rep for them, so if you are in Canada and you would like either a horror box, a dark romance box, a dark fantasy box, or a box that mixes all three of these, I have a code down below and you can get $5 off your first purchase. This book is about a woman, I believe her name is Olivia, and she wakes up one night, it's pitch black, she's on her bedroom floor, there's just a pile of vomit next to her, and she has no idea what is going on. Furthermore, her husband is nowhere to be found. She's just trying to clean up, and she realizes the power is out. She only has a little bit of charge on her cell phone and it's got no service anyway. She doesn't have the internet because they're in a wireless building because they recently just moved here to this building in the middle of nowhere that's supposed to be part of a big operation. There's going to be more buildings in the area, but they're the first building. And she's just basically trying to figure out what's going on. This one went in some very strange and ridiculous ways. Like, you know from the cover of this book that it's going to have something to do with bugs, and it definitely does, and it takes that to an extreme. And there were certain things about this that I don't know how I exactly felt about them, but I do know that while reading this, I was enjoying my time with it. It got creepy, it got gross, it got weird, and that's what you want in horror. On to my 4.5-star reads, the first one being Take a Bow, Noah Mitchell. Much like The Year That Shakespeare Ruined My Life, this is another theater-based book, except for our protagonist is a video gamer. He wants nothing to do with the theater, but he's in love with this guy he's been gaming with for about a year, and even though they're not supposed to talk to each other about who they are and give any identifying details, the guy he's talking to lets slip that he just came back from rehearsal. Who also just came back from rehearsal? Our protagonist's mom, and she actually wants him to join the cast because they need more boys, because community theater always needs more boys, and he decides to join the cast so he can potentially meet the man of his dreams. This obviously comes with a power imbalance, and I thought that that whole situation was handled so well. I really enjoyed seeing how that part of this played out. Additionally, I really enjoyed seeing this main character, who is not part of theater, go into this and try to figure out the theater scene. And again, it was just so much fun to see a production through the eyes of somebody who has never done it before. My other 4.5-star read was In Deeper Waters. This again is another one that I read for the Queer Lit Readathon, and this was just so delightful. In this one we have a prince named Tal. Basically every time one of the royals comes of age, they go on this quest around the kingdom, and things immediately go wrong where he is, and that is a big problem. There's schemes and kidnapping and political things and trying to stop other things, and then also some magic elements that I sort of saw coming and then was delighted when it actually happened. This also had a delightful queer romance at the center of it, and I very much enjoyed it. I'm going to have to read more by this author. On to my 5-star reads, the first one being How Story Works. This one is exactly what it says on the tin. It is a non-fiction book about how stories are created, no matter what medium you're working in. These are just kind of the things that you need to consider when putting a story together. I thought it was really well written, and I enjoyed how it was very repetitive to try to get these certain things into your mind of exactly what what this different terminology meant. And then it also gave really good examples from popular culture, some that I've actually loved in the past, as to different reasons why things were written in certain ways and why those were strong choices. If I ever get around to creating my own thing again, I'm definitely going to have this next to me, and I'm going to use it to make sure that I am making something that is excellent and worth other people's time. The first book I read this month is a book called An Honest Lie. This is a book about a woman who up until pretty recently was an artist in New York, but she's recently relocated, I believe, to the West Coast to be with her boyfriend. They live kind of in a secluded area, and she is kind of learning to hang out with his friends. She's been there probably just under a year, and she's in this whole friendship thing, but because of the way she grew up, and we'll address that later, she is quite an isolated person, so she doesn't really care about the socializing thing, but she's willing to do it for him. When it comes to her upbringing, we also see that and how her mother was a single mother and basically ended up taking her to stay with this person that she used to know when she was younger, and how that situation got really, really bad. I'm just going to throw it out there, they end up living on a compound, so you can just imagine what kind of situation that was. Her past is very much a secret from her present, so when she is invited to go on a girls' trip to a location very near where she used to live, she does not want to go. This is a mystery thriller, so obviously there's some twists and turns, so that's all I'm really going to tell you about that. I really enjoyed seeing how this played out, and it had me on my toes, and I didn't guess everything that was going to happen, so I'm going to have to try a few more things by this author because I've heard mixed reviews of, I think, another book by this author. At least I'm thinking that it's by this author because I've never read by this author before, so I could just be confusing her name for somebody else's. Next we have Pumpkin by Julie Murphy. This is the third in the Dumplin' Companion series. This is a YA book about this boy named Waylon. He is in his senior year of high school. Him and his twin sister are about to graduate and go to school together, except for maybe they won't. Who knows? People might go to separate schools. Other things might be falling down around his life. And to top it off, his favorite drag queen doesn't win on the show that he watches all the time, and it just makes him so mad because he knows exactly why she didn't win. She didn't win because they don't want to crown a plus-size girl, and that pisses him off. So he, being plus-size, decides to put himself in drag for the first time and make an audition tape for the show. This has some consequences considering he's been trying to live his life pretty quietly until he can leave his small town and go full Waylon once he graduates. This is just so absolutely delightful. I've loved everything I've ever read by Julie Murphy, and I will probably continue to read everything she writes and enjoy it because she just has such a way with words and the representation and the way people are treated, and I just absolutely adore her, and I adore this book. Next we have The Insiders by Marco Shiro. This is my middle grade book, and this is about a boy named Hector who is recently relocated to a new school, and when he's there he does find this group of people who are nice to him, but then also these other people that start bullying him, and that becomes a really big problem. This school is nothing like his old school. It doesn't even have a drama department, which what even is that? And one day when he's trying to get away from these bullies, he hides in this janitor closet and then seems to realize that whenever he needs to get away from them, this janitor's closet just keeps popping up places, even if he's not in the same part of the hallways of the school. Additionally, he might not be the only person who can find this room, except for those other people don't even go to his school. I think I've said this phrase even in this video already, but this book is so freaking delightful. I loved everything about learning to know these characters, all of these side characters, all these people he meets along the way, all of the different discussions, all of the different types of representation, all of the things these characters went through together as friends, and it's just so wonderful. When my niece is a little bit older, I am definitely giving her this book. Next we have Lavender House by Lev A.C. Rosen. This is a historical fiction book that takes place around San Francisco in the 1950s and has to do with this household where basically everyone who lives there is queer, but the outside world doesn't know about it. They have ways of being like, oh yes, no, he is just my assistant and I am married to her, but this is a lavender marriage. And our protagonist is a cop who is actually just kicked off the force because they found out that he was gay, and he is taken to this house to solve a murder because the person that runs this house figures that if he is queer, their secret is safe with him. I really enjoyed this murder mystery. I really enjoyed this whole dynamic, and This is not the first in a series, but if it was, and he were to go on to continue to do detective type things, I would read those books. So Lev, if you're watching this, which you're not, continue to write these books. I will continue to read them, please. Penultimately, we have another mystery thriller, and that's Things We Do in the Dark. This one has to do with a woman who lives in Seattle and is found next to the bathtub of her husband, who is deceased in said bathtub, and everyone thinks she did it. Not only is this terrible for her because she loved her husband and she didn't kill her husband, but she also has some skeletons in her past that definitely do not need to come to light, because if people find out those, they will think even more that she's the person that murdered her husband. On the flip side of this, because this is written about 5 parts, we meet a podcaster who has a podcast called The Things We Do in the Dark, and he, since a young age, has been very invested in this one true crime case, which actually ties into our first protagonist, and that's all I'm going to leave it at. I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed how things intertwined. I really enjoyed how it kept you on your toes as to who did what and where and who was accused of what, and did the justice system fail people or not. This was fantastic for me. My favorite book that I read this month is The Many Half-Lived Lives of Sam Sylvester. This is actually a book that I got through the Trans book box. It was very kindly sent to me for free, so thank you very much for that. As you might be able to guess, this is a book about a character named Sam Sylvester. They are non-binary and they have recently moved to a new small town because of things that happened in their past at their previous high school. They were the victim of bullying, they narrowly escaped that bullying with their life, and they have moved to a new town with their father. However, unbeknownst to them when they moved, they didn't realize they were moving into the house that 30 years previously somebody died, and people are pretty sure it was murder, but other people think it was just a fatal accident. Something you might know about me if you've been watching my videos is this year I've gone on a total true crime kick, so this book was right up my alley. Sam meets new friends along the way, but is also trying to figure out what happened in their new house, and everything about this was wonderful to me. The pacing of how you learned information about the previous case and Sam's past, I absolutely adored how we were just given this little bit of information at a time, and also the very deep connection between Sam and their father, who is actually an adoptive single father, and the fact that Sam is on the spectrum and didn't even speak to their father for the first year they were living together, and just that entire bond. I absolutely loved seeing all of those things in this book. If you want to hear me talk more about these books, or other books for that matter, the playlist for my weekly entertainment wrap-ups is always linked down below. If you've read any of these or plan on reading any of these, please let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you're here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that and so many other things, all of that's down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!